Hello and welcome back to the Private Client Podcast. For those tuning in for the first time, my name is Charlie Chami. I'm an independent financial advisor at Glams IFA and a co-founder of the Private Client Network, a networking group for professionals dealing with private individuals. We're on a mission to break down the silos between all the different professions and improve the service to our clients and grow our respective businesses. Today, I'm delighted to be speaking to the wonderful Kim Sare, a chartered financial planner at her brand new firm, Guided Financial. Despite Guided being new, Kim has been in the financial planning space since 2007. She was the youngest chartered financial planner in Wales, and I believe the third youngest in the UK. And prior to setting up Guided Financial, has run a very successful outsourced paraplanning firm, Parafinity. Kim, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's an absolute pleasure.
Before we dive into all things financial planning and Guided, I'd love to know a bit more about you, how your career started, and in particular, you didn't do a finance degree. You studied law. So what enticed you into our world of financial planning?
Oh, that's a great question. So I was already working for a financial planning business as an admin assistant. And back in those days, it was very much huge filing cabinets and you punch holes in the paper and you file it away and you answer the phone and you make teas and coffees.
Yeah.
And as I was nearing the end of my degree, my then boss was a really great financial planner and the firm is brilliant. I didn't realize this quite so much until much later on in my career. But the business is called Estate Capital Financial Management, based in Swansea. And basically, he was like, "Look, you can do a law career if you want to. You can totally do that. But before you kind of embark on that, can you just take a short detour? Just get some qualifications, see what you think, see if you like it."
I
So I
love it.
became
That
his
was the pitch.
protege. Yeah. So he convinced me basically that
He
a
knew
career.
he knew what would happen.
Yeah, he did. And I think, and we worked so well together. And even to this day, I think I'm still his locum. And if anything were to happen to him, I'm the first on his call list. We've maintained a great relationship. He's like a father figure and a mentor to me. But yeah, so he definitely convinced me that a career in financial planning might be worth a short detour. So he offered me what he called a training contract because I'd already applied for and been accepted into a couple of training contracts. So I didn't know, I was a bit wet behind the ears. Had no idea that there was no such thing as a training contract in financial planning at that time. I
No.
just was like, oh, this is the same as a training contract in law. So I got totally suckered into it, and I'm very glad I did.
No, that's cool. How long were you there for?
So I'd already been there. So I started working there when I was 20. I finished my degree at 22. And then I was with him for 5 years before moving on to another business in South Wales in order to become self-employed because my role with him was employed and I felt like I needed to sort of kick the rug out from under myself and crack on with kind of being entrepreneurial. And
So
it
did
was a huge
you
mistake.
qualified in that first role?
I did at
Yeah,
24, yeah.
it's really
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, so I was already in the thrust of it. When you're doing a degree, like you're revising for exams. So it was literally just going straight. I finished my last exam on the Friday for my degree, and I started studying for my chartered financial planning qualification on the Monday. I gave myself the weekend off.
Wow.
Um, so I pedaled it really hard. And I'm so glad I did because, at the time I had no kids, no family, and it was so easy, really, on reflection. The qualification that I've since got when I did my trust and estate practitioner qualification, that was a steep curve because I'd been out of the education game for quite a long time and it was a real struggle.
Yeah, you really appreciate the time you've got at university, like later, how easy it was to study with that was your main focus. And then
Yeah.
I guess like everyone listening to this podcast, you go into working full time and having to study out of hours and you're like, wow, I didn't know how lucky I was.
Exactly. Yeah, it's only in reflection that you can count your blessings, really.
So I've I've got a little anecdote involving you actually. I don't know if you remember, but I came to see you, I think maybe 5 or 6 years ago. So I work with my dad. He started our financial advisory firm, and we were looking for some para planning support. And we came to see you. And my dad has got many wonderful qualities. including sort of lethal eye for detail and radar for sort of someone blagging it. And we came out of the meeting with you, and genuinely, I don't think I've ever seen him so impressed with someone. His first words he said when we came out of that meeting, he was like, "She is very, very impressive."
Wow.
So there you go. And that
Oh
I
my
am
goodness.
genuinely, I don't know if I've ever heard him say that coming out of a meeting with anyone. So that would have been presumably in the Paraffinity.
In Paraffinity, yeah. It was, so we changed the name a couple of years ago. We had a proper refresh. And before that, it was called Integrated Paraplanning Solutions, which is quite a
That's
mouthful.
it. I remember that.
Yeah. And I remember you coming to our office actually, because you're one of the few people who actually wanted to meet us in person. Because even then, a lot of our meetings were online. This
Oh,
was
really?
pre-COVID. Yeah.
So what
So
happened? So you were at the you qualified, you were at the financial planning firms. Were you giving advice in those days, or was it power planning roles, and then you decided to set up your own? How did that work?
okay, so when I moved from Chris in Swansea, I moved to another business in Swansea. I'm a self-employed advisor and brought across some clients with me,
Yeah,
and then realized that actually the thing that I was really needing was to get out to Swansea. I'd done my degree there. I hadn't lived there prior to my degree, but I was like, actually, there's more to life than driving around the Gower.
as
And
nice as the Gower is.
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's great for like, to go there at the weekends, but when it becomes your day in, day out, and you're 25, 26 years of age, it's like,
yeah.
actually, I probably need to do something a little bit more vibrant with my life. So by that point, I had built up a client bank, which I then sold and moved to Bristol. So the intention was always to jump back into being an advisor. But having sort of spent a bit of time sort of feeling out different businesses and the way that things work in a bigger city when there's, bigger firms and stuff, I thought actually there isn't anywhere that I really want to settle down and, and start seeing clients again. Because I was really conscious, having given up those clients, that actually you make a commitment to people when you take them on as clients. And that commitment is that you're going to see them through their financial, plans, their financial goals. So to be able to say goodbye to them and know that I hadn't fulfilled on that commitment, I just wasn't prepared to do that again somewhere
Mm,
else. So it took me a little while of moving around from one business to another to realize actually there isn't a home for me that's not just one that I've built myself.
yeah.
But I was 29 at that point, and I felt trying to get authorized as a 29-year-old who's only recently got CAS status. It was just a too steep a climb at that age. So then I thought, well, the next best thing is I'll launch a paraplanner business, see that as a stepping stone, and then at some stage in the future, launch a financial planning business. So it took me a lot longer than I planned. I thought, I'd launch a paraplanner business, grow it for 3 years, hand it over to Susanna, who's the CEO of that business, and then I'd crack on with being a financial planner again.
Mm.
But it took nearly 8 years. So,
Yeah,
you know,
it's funny.
quite
Time does have a way of getting away from, I think, all of us. Just really quickly. So for all the non-financial advisors or planners on that are listening, what's paraplanning?
so paraplanning is what a paralegal is to a lawyer. But there's a couple of differences. So in the way that paraplanners work typically is they can be more qualified than the financial planners themselves, which
Yeah,
means that they
often.
end up doing more technical aspects of it. So my team were largely more qualified than most of our clients in the early days. And we did a lot of the kind of the tax planning, cash flow forecasting, the complex inheritance tax planning, anything that requires complexity would be handed off to us. Now, there are other paraplanners out there where their role is actually doing a lot more of the administration. It's quite a broad function,
Yeah.
but we focused on the stuff that we knew we could be good at. So like before the meltdown in the defined benefit review space, thanks to British Steel and all of that drama, a lot of our work was reviewing final salary pensions and helping financial planners to work out whether they ought to recommend retaining them or not.
Mm.
So yeah, so it was
That's
like a
really
very
technical. That is definitely a technical end of the space, and you have to be. For those who don't know, you do need to be specially qualified to do what's called pension transfer advice. So yeah, I'm sure that was really helpful to the firms that needed it.
yeah, and then that's kind of how we positioned ourselves really, is that we could be your technical kind of experts, if you like, in that domain. So
Mm.
it's given us quite a wide exposure to a lot of work, which meant that even though I wasn't advising during that period of time, I was actually doing quite a lot of the very technical stuff related to pensions on divorce and retirement planning and retirement income strategizing and inheritance tax and stuff. So we were doing quite a lot of complex stuff.
Well, I mean, from my experience, paraplanners get to see basically every part of the process. I mean, it sometimes includes the client-facing work, but everything that happens or everything about the recommendation, why you're making it and implementing it, you get to see. So, I mean, you must have been in a great position of seeing how different advice firms were working.
Yeah.
Bet you had a little black book like what you thought worked well and what maybe didn't work so well.
Yeah. So how that evolved is I ended up myself personally within Parafinity becoming more of a consultant to the firms. So sharing best practice, digging in deep to their processes and trying to kind of streamline them or make them kind of more central to their value proposition and stuff like that. So I definitely did over the years picked up quite a lot of the good, the bad, and the ugly. And then what we tended to do as a business was just keep moving towards the really, really good. So now we've got not a huge number of clients in Parafinity, but they're all exceptional financial planners.
That's
And what
great.
that means to me is launching Guided is that for the last 5 years, I'm able to now cobble together, they say that imitation is a form of flattery, and now my processes and businesses taken off kind of the cream of what are effectively the best financial planners in the UK.
Yeah, I mean, why not? I mean, if you're seeing something done extremely well, like, yeah, absolutely take it on. And those firms would have picked it up from somewhere themselves. I think advisors generally, we're all pretty good at the conferences that we go to. Like, we talk about what we do and how we do it.
Yeah,
I think we're pretty open. I've
definitely.
always said that, generally speaking, I feel more camaraderie with other financial advisors and planners than I do competition. I mean, occasionally
Yeah.
you're in competition, but usually it's just like sharing experiences and some of the sort of situations you get into. So I think we're pretty good at sharing best practice.
Yeah,
There's some exceptions,
definitely.
but
Yeah, and it's one of my missions actually. So obviously I genuinely believe in collaboration across sectors and collaboration within sectors as well. And I think that one of the missions that we're going to have within Guided is going to be building in open. So anything that Parafinity supports Guided with, we're going to be sharing with Parafinity's clients so that they get the opportunity to kind of take on board that practice as we're evolving it, and also learn from the mistakes that we're going to be making in Guided as well, because it's a roller coaster, right? There's ups and downs.
yeah, no, I've definitely had phases where you think you think the sort of provision of advice or planning, like it should be done in a certain way, and you give it a try, and then for some reason, actually in the nuts and bolts of rolling it out, you're like, actually, there is some. It's not as smooth as it's not rolling out as smoothly as in my head it would work. So
Yeah.
there'll definitely be some things like that. So what happened? So you were 8 years running sort of jointly the paraplanning firm. You still had it in your head you wanted to give advice. So how did that happen? When did you decide, right, now's the time, I'm gonna do it?
Yeah, so basically my husband got skin cancer, and so Paraffinity evolved. So one of the things I did in COVID is I learned to read and write JavaScript, and I
Okay.
built a software that could enable Paraffinity to write suitability reports and other technical documents as more effectively. So for a little while, I was like, okay, maybe I'll launch a tech startup. So I kind of sort of dabbled with it. I actually got to the point of doing a pitch deck for a seed fundraise and working with Simon, bless him, he gave me plenty of support. Thank you very much, Simon. And and then Stephen got skin cancer,
Wow.
and skin cancer is what killed his mum when she was 48, and he was 46 at the time. So it was like a
Oh,
real
geez.
big deal. Now, for most people, skin cancer is, you just get it cut off, and it's a bit of a whack-a-mole scenario. Whereas for us, it was a proper wake-up call. And so I went through this whole process of like aligning my values and my mission and my objectives in my life, and like, what do I want from my life? And realized that working 18 hours behind a computer in a tech startup is probably a really poor choice for me,
Mm.
because I love people. I love chatting to people. I love lunches. I love meetings and coffees. And, I thrive on being around other people. So then I was like, okay, well, what skills have I got that mean that I can spend more time in front of other people and with other people? And I'm like, oh, come on, is the, it's not rocket science here. I need to just get back to being a financial planner and offering my services to help other people on their life's journey, which is aligned with my life journey and
Yeah.
towards fulfillment and purpose and feeling really good about the way you live your life. So yeah, that's how it kicked off.
It makes a lot of sense. I think our sector is it's a joy to work in. I really like it, and I think it fits so well with how lifestyle stuff. Do you have kids? Do you have other commitments personally that you want to give proper attention to? I think it fits in so well.
Yeah.
There's probably another conversation about the sort of lack of women in financial planning, especially when you look across at law, particularly private client solicitors and family solicitors, absolutely chock
Hmm.
full of women, like really full and like really sort of done well on that diversity side of it, particularly when it comes to the gender side. And I just think financial planning is absolutely made. Like women would, as a not to generalize too much, I think there's so many traits and things that come naturally to women that just would be brilliant for this sector.
Yeah,
Um,
totally.
I just think we should have more. But I think if people knew, I think we would. I don't think it would be a problem at all. I just think it's a legacy thing, and hopefully it's improving.
Yeah, I mean, still 17% of financial planners are women, so it really is unbalanced. And I think one of the things that I've noticed is women financial planners have a target focus of women. And I find that really interesting
Mm,
because I don't know whether that's like a confidence about dealing with men, but what's been fascinating for me. So at the time when I first thought about Guided, I conceived of her as being for women. But actually, I get on brilliantly with men as I do women. And the clients that I've worked with in the last couple of weeks and months have been, the lead has been men, the men in the relationship. And they're the ones that are like, they want to get the stuff done. And through my interactions with them, I am helping to facilitate the women of these family groupings with a like understanding of financial matters as well. So their confidence is rising whilst also it not being like, oh, I work with women and only women. So I really have someone to thank for that. So when I was setting up Guided, I was thinking about what my niche would be and how I would take it forward. And I spoke with one female who's the leader of a very big financial planning business in London. And she was like, God, no, don't restrict your market by 50%,
yeah,
men need financial planning too. And they like working with women. It's not like a men doing business with men kind of environment. You've got that wrong. So I've
I
got her to
completely
thank.
agree. I think that was a really, yeah, good call.
Yeah.
And also, sometimes you could have it's one of those things. The decision could be made out of quite a good purpose of like, I want to help more women with their financial plans. But within that, you might only attract women who are the slightly more go-getter, higher earners that are confident and approach you directly, when actually the slightly more maybe the sort of not higher earning women who need it just as much, if not more, maybe will get hidden and you wouldn't see them because maybe it's their husband that is slightly more in control or directs it. Whereas if you get
Definitely.
the couple, then you can just address both of their needs really, really well. So yeah, I think that
Yeah. Yeah.
makes a lot of
And
sense.
I've actually got a case study of that fairly recently with a friend of mine who her husband's in charge of the finances and she's very smart, capable woman and she wouldn't have no trouble. But you've got a division of labor in your relationship, right? One of you does some jobs, one of you does the other. He does
Yeah.
the finances. And so for us working together, she's like feeling more like she feels like she's got a greater degree of control over it, even though she's offloading it to him as a division of labor rather than a confidence differential. And I
Yeah,
think that's been
100%.
powerful.
It's
Yeah,
changing generationally as well. Like they're it's hard to generalize too much, but if I was to compare the couples that we look after, the 60 and 70-year-olds versus the 30 and 40-year-olds, the couple dynamics are different. Like like I think it's working its way through the system in
yeah,
terms of like parity of earnings and division of labor on all fronts. So I think there is differences. It's hard to generalize across all generations as well.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's quite. I see that as well, and also about purpose. So both in the couple seeking to achieve purpose, even if that means that, oh, he's not earning as much as he could based on his earning potential and his status in his role, because actually he only wants to work 3 days a week so that he can focus on doing the other thing that drives him forward, with intention and fulfills him, basically. And I love that about this change in generation. People they care less about how much they earn, and it's more about how those earnings can fit into a life well lived.
It's
And
so
that's
true.
basically
And I
what our
think
niche is.
I think that'll increasingly happen. I think men will take more time off. I put it to someone recently, actually, because it's often sort of put in um, framed in a way that sort of men didn't want to, or shirk certain responsibilities. But I said, actually, men could only take 2 weeks paternity until really, really recently. And
Yeah.
a really good friend of mine, he was working at Siemens at the time, and he was basically the first guy in Siemens UK to take, I think it was 3 months or 6, basically a
Mhm.
solid, proper chunk of paternity leave. And he said once he did it, it became super common. Like people caught up with it. It caught on really, really quickly. And now, like honestly, just like a few years later, guys I know taking months of paternity leave is just it's become so normal and shot up. And I just think those trends will carry on. Just the division of labor will continue being slightly more equal, just depending on the skills of the couples or what they want to do,
Yeah.
which is really
Well,
good.
yeah, we're straying into different territory here, but one of the things that has been really interesting about that, in my experience, is the shift in roles of masculinity within it. It's not keeping up with people wanting to change things. So those who are vanguard in that kind of approach, initially they come up meeting a lot of resistance. And so my husband took shared parental leave when my daughter was born, so he had big chunks of time off work as well. And on the one hand, it was amazing because it meant that we could spend time together and we could nurture our family, and it's been really great for their bond. On the other hand, he's felt a bit emasculated by it, because of his sort of his social status. So I think it's going to take more men going, I don't care what people say or think, or the comments or the backlash. I'm just going to crack on and do it. And then eventually the dam will break and it'll be normal, a new normal. And I think that we're on the way to that.
Yeah, yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right. So in an effort to bring it slightly back
Yeah.
to financial planning, um, so when did it you wanted to do this for a long time, had it in the back of your head, and when did you launch?
So we launched on my birthday on the 3rd of May this year. So we did a bit of
Nice.
a soft launch. So I got my regulation status back in March, and then doing a lot of kind of role plays and making sure that I've got the proposition right and kind of taking feedback from close friends and family. That
Yeah.
happened for a little while. And then, yeah, we launched to new client inquiries on the 3rd of
That
May.
must have been an exciting and slightly scary day. The moment you're like, well, right, you can now take on clients and go, especially
Yeah.
after sort of like quite a long build up.
Definitely, yeah. And so it has been a long build up as well, because things move slowly, especially when you've already got one business, and the whole handover process to the
Yeah.
team and making sure they've got the right team in Parafinity that it can run without me. And that's been amazing. I really wish I had just sort of, dropped the team into the deep end without me years ago, because they're doing better off without me in some ways. It's amazing.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's cool. Anything how was so did you decide, have you gone directly authorized, or you under a different a firm as an appointed representative? How have you done that side of
Yeah,
it?
so Guided Financial is a trading style of 3S, which is a client of Parafinities. So I
Oh,
worked with,
really?
yeah. So when
Perfect.
I was like trying to figure out which way to go, direct authorization for me is the only way to go, and I've seen that from various different angles over the years. So it had to be a direct
Mm.
authorization. So then it was like, okay, how quick can I get there with direct authorization? And a couple of my friends have gone through this whole process in the last year, and they're like, oh my God, it's like 12 months.
Yeah,
And
I've heard it can be quite onerous.
so when I spoke with Mark Sacre, who is a client, so he's a client of Paraffinities, and I also do have previously done quite a lot of consulting for him to like reshape his business, because he's got an aging business and he wants to kind of reignite to people of his own age in a certain kind of creative demographic. So we've been working together anyway. I was like, oh my God, our values are just so aligned. The way he works is exactly the way I would work. So I basically said to him, do you want to have me? And we can work together and then make a decision. It's a bit of an experiment, really. Like he's going to keep pushing on his new niche, and I'm going to be pushing guided financial, and then we're going to make a choice as to merging it under one brand at some future stage. So I'm obviously, guided financial is the one that's going to win. If I have to arm wrestle them, then fine.
It's been said here.
Yes. But if it should transpire that Guided Financial is my baby and he wants to keep his baby and we don't ever merge them, then at that point we'll just go our separate ways. I'll get direct regulation myself.
Yeah, it's really nice. There's a lot of choice in how sort of financial firms can structure themselves, and that, yeah, it's definitely doable. Like you can start one way and then switch it if it works or doesn't.
Yeah,
So yeah,
yeah,
I'm not surprised you got that choice. On the
yeah,
you said something at the beginning about cross-professional sort of working with other firms, and with private client network, we're just basically obsessed with it. It's something. So 12 years ago when I sort of became an IFA, and it was two things. I was like, one, I had clients who needed the services of solicitors, whether they need like lasting powers of attorney or trusts or wills or whatever it happened to be, and I didn't know any. And then simultaneously I was like, these solicitors must have clients that need financial advice. Where are they getting it? And I just couldn't find where to go to meet these people. And you go to networking, or I'd go to profession. So networking was a bit too general. You'd be sat with the thing I always quote is the night I was sat next to a logistics manager, and he was a great guy, but it just so unrelated. So we
yeah,
niched it down, like I sort of trying professional services networking, which was also good, and there was tons of lawyers there, but they were all corporate and commercial and property and every sort of flavor of law apart from private client law. And it was
mhm,
sort of this, I was like, right, there has to be something. We need to niche down more. So professional services wasn't specific enough. It had to be private client facing. And it's been really useful because, as suspected, like all of us, so like, I mean, you will go to a lot of events and conferences that are financial advice focused, but not so much. And the same with solicitors; they'll go to lots of private client law or family law events, and the same with investment managers. But we found there wasn't too much that connected all of those together, and that's not mentioning tax advisors or mortgage advisors or all the various sort of private client focused professionals. So I'm dead keen on connecting everyone for like the mutual benefit of providing a better service to all of our clients because they need those services, and then also
definitely.
growing our businesses in the process.
Hmm. Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I think the more that we can do to enhance the education of each other's roles, the better. One of the things that I've been thinking about recently is like actually maybe for financial planners to offer up their time to take solicitors and accountants through the financial planning process. Because it dawned on me that actually until you get to partner level in a law firm, maybe you don't feel like you need a financial planner. And then all of a sudden you're like, okay, I've got, I'm a partner now, I'm earning this amount of money. It kind of, the complexity kind of ratchets up. But interestingly, so I was at an event, I think it was a PCN, a private client network event,
There you
a little
go.
while ago. It
Of
was.
course it was.
Yeah. And I was talking to a partner of a law firm, and we were just, talking about, our respective roles as you do in these things. And I said, so, who's your financial planner? And he was like, I don't have one. And I was like,
Yeah.
okay. I was like, how long have you been a partner? And he was like, oh, about 20 years. I'm like, what?
Wow.
And you don't have a financial, he's like, I don't have the complexity of affairs. I'm like, seriously, you definitely do.
You
You
definitely.
definitely do. Even if you just Google the statistics on kind of the partnership in law firms in the UK, like there's loads of things that need to be done, whacking more
There's
money
there's
into
t-
pensions.
there's
Yeah.
tons,
So
and it's one of those like I think probably like lots of clients approach financial planning firms at life inflection points. There's usually a catalyst or something's approaching, and specific to solicitors, yeah, becoming partners definitely one. Usually equity partner because there's different. You can be a salaried partner, which has less effect if you stay as an employee, but definitely the equity partners because they'll usually then not no longer on PAYE. They become self-employed. Not kicked out, but are no longer a part of the company pension, so they need to set something else. So yeah, we've
yeah,
taken on a few at that exact inflection
yeah.
point.
And
And
what's
yeah, there's a great
so
need for it.
Yeah, there definitely is. And so like talking about life's inflection points, this is one of the things that I really wanted to focus in on, which is why Guided is the business that it is. And that's picking the big events, those big catalysts, and drawing clients in who have genuine need for financial planning. You know, there, like you say, there is usually a catalyst, and sometimes that can be changing jobs or it can be becoming an equity partner. But the events that I've picked as the main focus of Guided are those events where they're really big ones, you know, like having kids. Loads changes when you have children, and
Yes, it does.
planning for it vital. And also, you know, it's not necessarily the mega wealthy people who need to plan for having a family. Having a family affects everybody in some capacity, and things like divorce. You know, these are life's moments where there is an inflection point and you have an opportunity to grow, learn, develop, and become the person that you maybe weren't before that inflection point, you know,
Yeah.
a do-over in some cases. So it felt to me like that would be a really powerful way for Guided to start to support its clients. And obviously, once they're clients, then you'll support them through all of life's journey. But
Yeah.
at least to begin with, there's a lot of value in those big moments.
And it's great if you get people earlier on, because then you can put things in place before those moments happen. Um,
Yeah,
and so they're better prepared for it. And that's one of those things that's really satisfying. And it doesn't, make it onto a performance report of like investment return. And it's sometimes hard to put a monetary value, but can be extremely beneficial from a client point of view.
definitely, definitely. And
How,
you know,
so I
so
should have asked, but how's your husband now?
very well, thank you.
Good.
It's whack-a-mole, I think, in terms of he's got predisposition to skin cancer. And as long as we keep a good eye on it with mole mapping and, you know, he'll have chunks taken out of him probably for his life. But he's a bit of a stress head, so I think it's probably going to be a heart attack that eventually kills him rather than
Oh,
cancer.
all right. Well, that's a podcast for a different day. And
Yeah.
finally, do if you were to give any advice to either your younger self or to someone who is starting out in our profession, what would
Mhm.
you say? What advice would you give to them?
So, if someone young starting out our profession is different from the advice that I would necessarily have given to myself. So, someone young starting out a profession, I would say get qualified as quickly as possible. Get
Yeah.
qualified before life throws itself at you. And you know, those who are already at diploma level, make sure that you take the next step and that you are growing your because with your qualifications comes your confidence, and with your confidence comes experience. And so that's definitely my top tip there. In terms of the advice I'd give to myself, what I should have done is I should have been strong enough and bold enough to set up a financial planning business at 29. I think just didn't have the confidence to do it and be in a new city, in a new environment, and just basically, you know, self-employed under my own steam, which so the paraplanning was definitely the fallback position. And I don't regret it because I've learned so much and met some wonderful people along the way, but I do think I could have been bolder.
I think both bits are really useful. I definitely agree on the getting qualified before life, the demands on your time increase. Um, I think a lot of younger, and funny enough, so I used to work in banking and I sort of transferred to advice at 29 as well. And I think you imagine at that age, or probably anytime in your 20s, I thought age was a bigger factor than it turned out to be.
Yeah.
When I eventually did it, I was lucky. I was sort of doing a bit of a hybrid. I was doing the sort of internal para planning and picking up clients and giving the advice sort of, so it was a bit of a hybrid role for a number of years, which was really useful. But yeah, I agree. Age is not the barrier you may think it is.
No, it's not. It really isn't, especially these days, because you know there's a real push on like not being discriminated against for various things. You know, there's a lot of movement in this towards equality, and that's equality of opportunity as well. I feel really like we're moving in the right direction there.
But then again, I mean, I wouldn't be too hard on yourself. The technical experience you'd have got doing what you did, I mean, it's invaluable, and you would no doubt be a better advisor at the time you did it than had you done it earlier. I mean, I think that would probably go for all of us. So
Definitely. Yeah. Well, thank you.
Awesome. No, thanks so much for joining us. Hopefully see you at one of the events soon.
Definitely.
And thanks for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Charlie.